collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 177 of Ask Bossk Bounty. I must apologise that there wasn't an episode last week, but as many of you will know, I was in Nashville, Tennessee for the ICCC, but we are now back on track, and this is episode 177 of Ask Bossk Bounty, the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, leave your questions down below. We have loads of great questions this week and I can't wait to get into them. And if you happen to enjoy the video, don't forget to drop a like down below, because that really does help the video and the channel. And if you're in the USA and you missed my community post or any of my social media posts, Amazon.com currently have the Dark Trooper, the Deluxe Dark Trooper, for 38% off, which I thought was a pretty good bargain. If you want to check that out, there is a link in the description below, and if you buy anything through that link on Amazon.com, that does help the channel as well, so that's much appreciated. Just thought I'd give you a heads up on that pretty decent price. Alright then, so moving on to the first question of the week, and it is from Jesse Perez, and he says, "Hey boss, question. Do you think with the Hunter mold we could get a TVC Republic Commando in the future? And if so, do you think Hasbro would make a 4-pack Delta Squad?" I personally think that's entirely possible. I believe that the Vintage Collection often follows the Black Series. I say that quite often because they do share the digital sort of renders and the digital sculpts these days. And at the end of the day, if they're going to be doing a Delta Squad or a Republic Commando in the Vintage Collection, then no doubt they'll probably use the Hunter mold or sculpt for that body at least. I know that probably won't sound great for some people because it's not 100% accurate, but I could see that that's the way that they would go. This is No Cave says, question for next week. The Troop Builder 4-packs have been a great addition to the line, but it seems like enthusiasm dwindled on some sets like the Echo-based Troopers and Death Troopers, because collectors might have gotten their fill of the carded TVC figure release before the 4-pack was released. Collectors who troop build and buy figures by the case are already ahead of the game before Hasbro can even announce the 4-packs. Looking at you, Tyler and Johnny Pallets. We also know the formula for these is that Hasbro takes an existing TVC figure sculpt and adapts it for the 4-pack release. Do you think Hasbro should consider flipping the script and releasing a 4-pack first and a slightly different carded release later? It might breathe some life into the Troop Builder 4-pack line. Yeah, I definitely think that is something that they should consider, and it's something that we might be seeing with that Tusken Raider 4-pack. You're getting the Chieftain in there. Maybe they will release the Chieftain on his own card back sometime in the future. I could definitely see them doing that, because I think most people would want the Chieftain on his own card back. I get what you're saying about the release, and some of the decisions that they make are extremely odd. If you take the most recent deluxe figures of Luke Skywalker in his training and the, what was the other one? The Tusken with the Massif dog. You know, they released those for pre-order after releasing the pre-order for the single carded figures. And when I did my review of the Tusken Warrior, lots of people in the comments said, yeah, nice figure and everything, but I've cancelled my order because I'm just going to get the one with, you know, the Massif dog. Which kind of makes sense. If you're a loose collector, why do you need, you know, 2 of that particular character? You don't need 2 Tusken Warriors. So carded collectors obviously want the carded version, but for anyone else that just wants a loose one, they're going to want the one with the Massif dog. And I think Hasbro shot themselves in the foot with both that one and the Luke training from the Book of Boba Fett. Seemed a very odd decision to me. At the end of the day, they're just killing their own sales. So yeah, I think that they should flip it. And with the 4-packs especially, yes, they should definitely be looking at, you know, perhaps putting something new into the 4-packs so they sell well, and then maybe releasing a figure from that 4-pack on a card, just like with the, you know, the Tusken Chieftain guy. He would be great on a card back. Jackson Smith says, great video as always. Question for next week. How do you think Hasbro can improve the figure articulation and looks? Can they go any farther from the new hips and photoreal faces? This is a bit of a difficult one, isn't it? Because I think any sort of extra articulation or better paint apps on 3 3/4 inch figures is going to impact the price further, and personally I don't really want that. I think what we're getting at the moment for, you know, brand new figures, not reissues with, you know, updated photoreal, but brand new figures, I think they're pretty much there. I'm not too sure how much you can really improve on that. I think maybe if we were to get like an all new Jedi sculpt, for example, then maybe they could incorporate the butterfly shoulder joints. Perhaps maybe they're a little bit small to do that, I don't know, but I think, you know, there's certain characters like Jedis that we definitely need an improvement on, but in terms of where we're at the moment, the paint apps and the articulation that we are getting for these very small figures, really, I think it's pretty much there. I'm not too sure how much more you can improve them, and as I say, if they did, then we'd have to pay for it at the end of the day. Brandon Upson says, great episode again, question for next week. With the all-new Darth Revan pipeline, do you believe Hasbro will be also working on a new Darth Malak figure to go with Revan, as it was announced for the Black Series not too long ago? Thank you for everything you do for the community. So as I mentioned in a previous question there, I think, you know, TVC does often follow what the Black Series do, and I could imagine them sort of maybe scaling down that sculpt. I think maybe they might want to see how Revan sells. I've got no doubt it will sell really, really well. Maybe they're going to look at sales for that before they embark on other EU figures, but let's face it, I think if they've done it for the Black Series and it sells well in the Black Series and they've got that digital sculpt, then it will be, you know, an easier thing to do than like a brand new figure, basically. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. I've got to say the Black Series version of that figure does look fantastic, and it would be something that I, and I'm guessing many of you guys, would want in TVC. Grant Mackey says, been a fan of your channel since before Ask Bossk #1. Your content is my #1 go-to for a dose of Star Wars collector fun. I appreciate that, Grant, for being such a long time subscriber. Really appreciate that, man. And he says, question for next week, what is going on with peg holes on new figures? I just opened a new Hunter figure and his peg holes are so shallow they are completely useless. I understand that rocker ankles have something to do with it. At this point, however, I wish Hasbro would either somehow bring peg holes back or stop pretending and do away with them and come out with a new stand we can buy, because I keep having to buy more sticky tack. Keep up the great work. Cheers from Wisconsin. So yeah, regarding the peg holes, I've got no doubt that rocker ankles has something to do with it. I'm not going to blame them completely though, because I've got a few examples here of where the peg holes are really, really bad and the figures don't have rocker ankles. So I don't think we can completely blame rocker ankles. I would much prefer figures to have rocker ankles because I think you can pose them better. You can just get them into better poses, and I think you can get them to stand better when you use the rocker ankles properly, basically. This is a great example. This is my go-to figure for you know, poor peg holes, and this mold's been used a few times since, hasn't it? It's Aldani mission Andor figure. We've got the Morak disguise for Din Djarin and Migs, and the peg holes on these guys is pretty awful. I've never been able to get these guys to stand on a stand with peg holes, you know, so I'm always having to do like this and they always sort of wobble around. So this one for me has always been really poor, and he doesn't have rocker ankles. And Leia Bouche, I know she's got small feet and everything, but she's still got quite a high step there. The peg holes on this Leia Bouche are really bad as well, and there's no way you're going to be getting her on a stand. So that's just two. I'm sure there's lots more, but yes, you're right. Figures like Hunter with the rocker ankles, you would think that they could do a better job. But as I say, I'm not going to completely blame rocker ankles. I think they've had historical problems with peg holes. They're not universal on each figure, and it is a bit of an issue. And yeah, it's something that I've brought up with the Hasbro team before, and they've gone, oh, I didn't even know it as an issue, but I'm sure they do, because when you look at their cases at these conventions, they've got little bits of glue holding the figures down to make sure they don't fall over. So there you go. Josh G says, hey boss, question for next week. So in regards to the reissue waves, do you think Hasbro's goal is to change the figure as little as possible to keep it close to the original VC? I think Shae Vizsla is the most significant change with a brand new head, and figures that I would like reissued such as Jango and Cody would need major changes, so I'm not sure they would release them on the same card back and VC number. Thanks. So yeah, in general, I think when they look at reissues, they look at the ones that are going to be the easiest ones for them to do, the ones that they can just straight reissue without having to do anything. In Shae Vizsla's case, I think they've always known that that head is terrible, and just to sculpt a new head probably wasn't too far out of their budget, and that was a good one for them to get out because it was popular and expensive on the secondary market. But yeah, in general, they just try and get the ones that are easy to do, that they can just straight repack, like your Kithibas, like your Woofs, decent figures like that. I think when it comes to Cody and Jango with the new clone sculpt, you know, those figures are out of date. I did a whole video on figures that I believe from TVC 1.0 that are safe from reissue. I will leave a link to that in the description below and put a little card just up there for you to click on so you can watch that after this video. And that just has me going through figures that I think are, you know, the sculpts are too old to reissue. You can't just bring that figure back out now. So I think it's safe from reissue. For example, I think Tarkin with the soft goods skirt piece, now we've got the new Piet figure. I think that figure is now gone. You're not going to get that one again. So if they do a Tarkin, it may have the same card back. I don't know. Maybe that's the conundrum that they find themselves in, that they don't want to use the same image but a different figure. Do you know what I mean? So who knows, man? But that's yeah, go and watch that video after this one, and you'll see sort of my expanded opinions on reissues. Gabble Dockage says, love your channel, especially when Little Boss gets involved. Question for next week: do you ever look at what Tungori has in his shop for clues as to what's coming next? Thanks for all you do. I'd say no as a whole. I think maybe he reacts to what's going on and what's coming out. For example, this figure here, I just featured this one in my most recent Tungori pickups. This is the, you know, the Theed Palace or Theed Hangar Padme, and she was pipelined for the Black Series, and then all of a sudden this one pops up on Tungori. Another example is the Weequay Skiff Master. He suddenly became available on Tungori, but Hasbro re-released the other one, you know, the normal Weequay. So, you know, maybe he just reacts to that sort of thing. I don't know, but I don't think you can sort of look at the figures that he has on there and go, oh yeah, that's because they're going to be reissuing X, Y, and Z. I'm not too sure that's how it works. Owen Brown says, hi Tim, my question for next week is, with the recent announcement of the writers and potential actors strike, do you think if Star Wars projects are delayed or put on hold, will Hasbro see this as an opportunity to get much needed characters out, i.e. Dooku and more of the original 96? Keep up the great work. So Owen, buddy, I actually answered this one maybe a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to feature your question because it's great to have you back in my comments section. I know you've always been a big supporter of the channel and everything, and I know you were going through some health issues, so I hope that you are fit and well again, my friend. And the way I answered that is basically yes. If there is a pause in any media, then that will definitely give Hasbro a chance to catch up on previous media. And obviously the OT, PT and things like that is obvious ways to go. Not too sure if they'd go to things like Solo and the sequel trilogy potentially. But so yeah, definitely if there's ever like a strike and no new media is coming out, then that allows for Hasbro to look at other things. SBS Production says, amazing content as always. Question for next week: if Hasbro celebrates Revenge of the Sith's 20th anniversary, what 5 figures do you think deserve a re-release or a retooling for the vintage collection? I think this is a perfect opportunity to fix their General Grievous figure, because I don't know if this is just me, but I cannot get that figure to stand up straight. Yeah, that one does cause a few issues. And does that one not even have peg holes? I can't even remember, but Revenge of the Sith for me has a wealth of opportunities. I've just put a few out here that I think we need. Ki-Adi-Mundi, I know he's featured probably more in other films, but you know, it would be a good opportunity to get a brand new Ki-Adi-Mundi out. He obviously dies on that scene of the bridge, and you've got the Commander Bakara as well, which would be a great figure to retool. He's a clone, so maybe you could get him out with you know, retooling the new body. I would love for them to do new Kashyyyk troopers. These ones are great and everything, but they've always had that weird sort of stance and lean. But if we had like a brand new squad of these, they would be fantastic. I've put Darth Sidious there because I've never really been happy with that figure. I think he looks like he's going to the opera. He's wearing some kind of mink coat. Never really liked the way they sort of executed that figure. And when it comes to retooling, sure, you've got like Cody and Gree, so many different clones that they could do. And also a new Anakin, basically. The Anakin Skywalker, was it VC13? I know it's quite rare on the secondary market and quite sought after, but the figure itself, especially the head sculpt, I think they could improve on that massively. So I think that might be more than 5, but yeah, Revenge of the Sith for me has got a wealth of things that they could possibly do. Horror Fan says, question for next week: do you think we can see more astromech droids in the line that have never been released in TVC, like R2Q5 and R3A2? I've got to say, after their recent record of releasing astromech droids and the fact that they can't decide which mold they want to use, and they're using the old version with the front compartment that doesn't close properly, I would really want them to do an all new astromech droid like they're doing for the Black Series. They're doing R2D2, aren't they, for the Black Series? And I think, did they pipeline the Grief Karga's droid as well, which will obviously use the body of that? So, you know, come on Hasbro, give us a new 3.75 inch astromech droid that then you can use just like you have done with the clone. that you can use for many other figures, and I think that's probably the way to go. So until they give us a new one, I don't really want them to sort of, you know, gamble on other ones. Tom Jurassic says, Tim, you are the best possible worst influence. Watching this made me go and scoop up a case of A New Hope Stormtroopers. Sorry, buddy. My question for next week is, why do you think we don't get more 3 or 4 packs each year? As a new collector, it seems like it would be an ideal way to fill out some gaps in the collection we all want to be filled. I totally agree. I love the 4 packs. I love the 4, you know, the 4 carded figures in a pack. Those Jabba's goons are great. Fantastic. The only thing I can think of why we don't get more of those is maybe they can't find or agree a retail partner to take them. Obviously, previous versions have been like Pulse exclusives, Amazon exclusives, things like that. Maybe they can't, you know, agree on that, or maybe they just don't have the budget in a single year to put out more than 1 or 2 of those. Basically, I don't know. We all love them, I think. Come on, Hasbro, give us more 3, 4 packs. I seem to like them. I think the community seem to like them. I can think of many 3 and 4 packs that I would like them to do, carded or, you know, army builder. So maybe that's a whole separate video. Doug Steinman says, question for next week, how likely is it that Hasbro Pulse releases a 4-pack of Rebel Commandos Endor? I know many fans are waiting for a repack of VC26, and it seems to be a good time considering the 40th Return of the Jedi card backs. I would take a repack of VC26 even without a 4-pack with unique face and ethnicities. Hasbro, take my money, thanks BB. So what do I think, how likely do I think it's going to be? Well, as the year goes on, it's becoming more and more less likely, I think. I think they've missed a trick if they don't do it with all the other Endor stuff that they've brought out this year. I've got these 2 here because I would like to see, if it is me doing it, I would like to see maybe 2 of this type with the trench coat and 2 with like the jumpsuit, which mirrors the vintage figure and how some of the characters looked in the actual movie. So maybe like a 4-pack army builder with, you know, 2 of each of those with, as you say, different ethnicities and things like that. I honestly don't know why we haven't got that, or any Ewoks for that matter. You know, when they've brought out an ATST, you've got the speeder bike, you've got the bunker, Scout Trooper. It just seems like the sort of good guy element is missing from the line this year, and it's a bit of a shame. Hot Toddy says, hey BB, thanks for all the great content. Question for next week, what do you think of a Star Destroyer bridge playset as the next in that range, similar to the Tantive 4 from ESB? It could have a top half as a place to stand the bounty hunters and Vader, and a bottom half with the officers and computer monitors. The included figure could be an Imperial commander in the black uniform to tick off the box for another original 96, or maybe a retooled ESB Boba Fett from the newest Boba mold. Mate, I think that's a great idea. I would certainly buy that. I think maybe the thing that's holding them back is we don't really have all of the bounty hunters in updated form. So if you're thinking about Forlom and Zuckuss, they're pretty old figures now. He's pretty old. IG's pretty old compared to the IG-11 figure. So I think that's maybe something that would potentially hold them back on that. But I love the idea. I mean, I would like the playset just to put the figures that I've already got in there. And your idea about the black uniformed Imperial officer, fantastic. That would be the perfect packing figure for me. Using that new, Piet mold, as we call it now. Great idea, buddy. And finally, Brandon Holbrook says, hey, boss, question for next week. TVC has been getting a lot of love this year so far, with most panels focusing primarily on the scale and with almost weekly reveals during the Bring Home the Bounty campaign. Do you think this is a sign that Hasbro is more committed to the scale and its collectors, or is it maybe a flash in the pan? So I always go back to 2020, when myself and a number of other collectors really weren't happy with the line. We weren't happy with the offering for the Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary, and we decided to sort of kick up a bit of a storm. I think if you compare what we've got this year compared to then, it is a huge difference. I think the line has come on massively. I still do think that we're missing, a bit of investment in terms of newly tooled figures. I think if they could up that budget and give us more newly tooled figures per year, then we'd not only be able to service the original trilogy and figures like that, but we'd also be able to get more of the new media figures out there. And I think, when we see something like Andor come out and the Black Series get a whole range of them and TVC only get 3 or 4, same with Obi-Wan, I think that's where the problem is. It just doesn't have the budget for the sort of newly tooled figures, and that's where we need to get it to next. You know, it's great getting these sort of partial tools for your Jabba's 4-packs, and it's great getting, you know, new Darth Vaders and what have you. But I still think with all the new media coming out, and also the fact that we always still want original trilogy, prequel trilogy figures, I just don't think the budget is where it still needs to be. But having said that, it is in a much healthier place than it was in 2020, and we are starting to balance the scales a little bit, because even the Black Series collectors moan about what the TVC gets and the Black Series doesn't get, so we're never happy. But I just think it's better than where it was. But we shouldn't ever stop pushing for more and better. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. I thank you all for watching. As I said before, if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, leave your question in the comment section below, and hopefully I will pick your question for that episode. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members. It was great to meet some of you at ICCC for the first time. People like Gary Moore, I've met you before, but there were others like Brett on FET and Brad from Rocket City Sith and Gary from Technomancer. So good to meet you guys. So thank you so much for the support. Alright then guys, thanks very much for watching, and we shall see you on the next one.